Hi everyone, I'm Dana from the Smith Balance and Concussion Center. There has been a topic that is not really talked about very often that has come up in our local news over the last few days called spinal concussion. And I'm starting to get a few questions about what is spinal concussion, so I thought I would make a video to share with you exactly what it is and signs and symptoms, kind of what to look for. Spinal concussions are different than a concussion that we normally talk about. Normally when we use the phrase concussion, we're referring to an injury of the brain. So a concussion itself is a mild traumatic brain injury, whereas a spinal concussion is a mild version of a spinal cord injury. And they're not studied nearly as much as brain concussions have been studied and researched, and we also think that they're very, very grossly underreported. So it's not being brought to medical professionals' attention nearly as much now as regular concussions. So I wanted to shed some light on what is a spinal concussion and what you would see in someone presenting with it. A spinal concussion causes numbness, tingling, or motor paralysis that is temporary in the arms or legs. It's most common in sports, particularly sports with contact, and we'll see it in wrestling, diving, gymnastics, and American version of football, also in hockey. And this injury typically involves the neck. So when the neck is involved, you'll get symptoms in the arms and the legs. And what happens usually with a spinal concussion is that there's an axial load, so pressure on or a force driven through the top of the head while the neck is either flexed or extended. So you can think about this in football, right? If the athlete isn't using proper form to tackle and their head is bent down and they collide on the top of their head with another player, that can cause trauma to the spinal cord itself. So we'll see this in younger kids because there's a lot of flexibility in the spine, and so there's an increased risk for pressure to occur on the spinal cord. We'll also see it in adults, in our weekend warrior athletes who maybe have a pre-existing spinal stenosis or some narrowing of the vertebral space around the spinal cord. We can also see a spinal concussion after a whiplash type injury, such as a more traumatic fall or a car accident. However, we don't really know too much more about spinal cord injury than that. We do know that symptoms involved with the spinal cord injury will fully resolve within 1 to 3 days. We do not know if trauma to the spinal cord with these spinal concussions, if they are cumulative. So meaning if you get more than one spinal concussion, is there more and more likelihood of permanent damage to the spinal cord itself, like we're starting to see with concussion. So some more research needs to be done on spinal concussion itself. It's typically not something we see very often, but I wanted to share a little bit about it with all of you in case you have questions about spinal concussion, as this is starting to make some headlines in our local news. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment or reach out and ask. We're always here to help answer your questions. Have a great day, everyone.